All right, so buckle up, everybody, because today we are diving deep into something pretty fundamental, team motivation.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, team motivation.
Not the rah-rah,
Fist bump.
kind of cheesy stuff. No, we're going way deeper. We're talking about how the very idea of a team is changing in the 21st century.
Right.
And what that means for keeping people engaged and productive.
Absolutely. And it's fascinating to see how much the research has evolved, too, because we're not just talking about those old motivational posters.
Oh, yeah, those are the worst.
You know, the ones that say, like, teamwork makes the dream work.
Oh, please.
Right.
So to guide our deep dive, we're tapping into some cutting-edge research by Ruth Kanfer from Georgia Tech School of Psychology.
Oh, yeah, she's brilliant.
And Gilad Chen from the University of Maryland's Management and Organization Department.
I've read so much of their work over the years.
They've been studying this stuff for years, and their insights are more relevant now than ever.
And I think what's really interesting is that their work helps us understand the shift from that traditional model of teams.
Right. Everyone crammed in the same office, reporting to one boss.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, those days are long gone.
Yeah. I mean, nowadays, it's less like a neatly organized symphony and more like a jazz ensemble.
Oh, I like that.
Where everybody's improvising and riffing off each other.
Exactly. So much more dynamic and fluid.
But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, can you remind us of the basics? How did Chen and Kanfer originally explain team motivation?
Okay, so back in 2006, they laid out this model with 3 core components.
Okay.
First, you've got motivational states.
Motivational states.
Yeah, which include things like team confidence and a shared feeling of empowerment.
Okay.
It's that sense of, you know, we can actually do this together.
So it's not just about individual pep talks. It's about the team believing in its collective ability to reach a goal.
Exactly.
Got it.
Then you've got goal setting.
Goal set.
Yeah, that critical stage where individuals and the team decide what they actually want to achieve. Like, where are we headed with this thing?
And this is where things can get a little messy, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Because individual goals and team goals, they don't always line up perfectly.
Yeah, and that tension is always there. It's like a constant balancing act.
Totally.
And then that leads us to the third component, goal striving.
Goal striving.
Right, all the energy and effort that we pour into actually reaching those goals.
So that's the actual doing part.
Yes, the nitty-gritty, the collaboration, the problem solving, all fueled by that shared motivation.
Okay, so their model shows this constant interplay between what's happening at the individual level and then what's happening within the team as a whole.
Right, and they're not separate things. They influence each other all the time.
Gotcha. So it's more nuanced than just, pumping everyone up with those cheesy motivational slogans.
Right, those rarely work in the long run.
It's about understanding that individual motivation and team motivation are totally intertwined.
Yeah, and ultimately those things determine whether a team sinks or swims.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
But you alluded to this earlier. The landscape of teamwork has changed drastically since 2006.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
And I think that's what makes this deep dive so interesting, right? We're not just revisiting a classic model. We're seeing how it holds up in a world where the definition of team is constantly evolving.
Exactly.
Right? It's not just everybody huddled around a conference table anymore.
No, it's much more complex than that.
Now we have teams spanning multiple departments, organizations, even continents.
Exactly. And I think that's where we need to go next.
Okay, so let's unpack what makes those multi-team systems so unique and how they challenge our traditional ideas about team motivation.
Sounds good. Let's do it. You know, before we jump into these massive multi-team systems, I think it's worth talking about this trend that's closely related, the rise of self-managed teams.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so we're shifting from these huge interconnected systems to smaller, more autonomous units.
Yeah, in a way. I mean, think about all the research on job design and motivation. One of the big takeaways is that the more control people have over their work, the more intrinsically motivated they tend to be.
That makes sense. I mean, nobody likes to be micromanaged, right?
Exactly. It just kills creativity and passion.
Totally.
And this applies to teams as well. Traditionally, you had a leader calling the shots.
Yeah, the boss.
But now we're seeing more teams operate with a much flatter structure where everyone shares decision-making and responsibility.
So it's less about hierarchy and more about a shared sense of ownership.
Exactly. And the research suggests this can be really motivating for team members.
Really?
Yeah. There was this study in the Journal of Applied Psychology that found self-managed teams were way more satisfied with their jobs and felt more empowered.
Wow, compared to teams with traditional leadership.
Exactly.
That's fascinating. But I'm guessing there are some challenges that come with this shift to self-management.
Oh, of course, it's not all perfect.
Right.
One of the biggest challenges is aligning those individual goals with the team goals when you don't have a clear leader setting the agenda.
Right.
You need tons of communication trust and a shared understanding of the team's purpose.
Yeah, it's like trying to steer a ship without a captain.
Exactly.
Everyone needs to agree on where they're going and how to get there.
And that raises another question. Does traditional leadership even matter in these self-managed teams?
Oh, that's a good one.
Can teams function just as well or even better when leadership is distributed among the members?
That's a debate that's been going on forever.
I know.
But it seems like these self-managed teams are at least making us rethink what effective leadership really means.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember that this trend towards self-management, it's often happening alongside another big shift.
Yeah?
Remote work and virtual teams.
Yes, the new normal.
And I think that's where those classic theories of team motivation really start to get stretched.
Totally. How do you build trust and a sense of team when you're not physically together?
It's a huge challenge. I mean, think about all those little interactions that happen in an office, grabbing coffee, chatting by the water cooler, brainstorming. You lose a lot of that in a virtual setting.
It's like trying to conduct an orchestra when all the musicians are in different time zones.
Yeah, and they're playing different instruments.
And without those face-to-face interactions, it's easy to feel isolated and disconnected.
Absolutely. It takes real effort to maintain that sense of belonging and shared as the identity when you're mostly communicating through email or video calls.
Right. And then there's that whole work-life balance thing, or should I say the work-life blur.
Ugh, tell me about it.
It's so hard to separate work from life when your office is your kitchen table.
Or your bedroom, or your couch.
Exactly. How do you switch off and recharge when work is always a few steps away?
Right, and how do you keep those non-work stressors from creeping into your team interactions and affecting everyone's motivation?
Right.
Those are big questions that researchers are trying to answer.
It sounds like that traditional playbook for team motivation needs a serious update.
It definitely does, and just when we thought things couldn't get more complicated, we have to add another trend into the mix.
Oh, no, what now?
Human AI teams.
Wait, we're bringing robots into this now?
I know it sounds futuristic.
It does.
But it's closer than you think. Artificial intelligence is getting so sophisticated, and it's already starting to show up in teamwork.
So we're not just talking about AI as a tool, like a fancy spreadsheet or a scheduling app.
Yeah.
We're talking about AI as a collaborator, as a teammate.
Exactly. And this raises all sorts of questions about the future of team motivation. For one, can we even be motivated to work with robots?
It's a good question.
Will we trust them? Will we feel threatened by them?
Right. Can we even apply the same motivational principles to these human AI teams that we do to human teams?
Yeah. It's uncharted territory.
It really is.
And one of the most interesting parts of this is the idea of theory of mind.
Theory of mind.
Yeah, it's our ability to understand that other beings have their own thoughts, beliefs, and intentions. Yeah. It's what allows us to empathize, predict behavior, and work together effectively.
So can AI develop a theory of mind?
That's the big question. Can it actually understand human motivation, not just mimic it?
I mean, that's a game changer.
It is. If AI can truly understand us, it could help us become more self-aware, more efficient, better collaborators.
What if it can't?
Right. The implications for teamwork could be huge.
This is blowing my mind.
Yeah.
We've gone from traditional teams to self-managed teams, from offices to virtual spaces, and now we're talking about robots as teammates.
I know, it's a lot.
It is. It highlights how dynamic and complex team motivation has become.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground, from the classic model of team motivation to the rise of AI teammates.
Yeah.
If your head is spinning right now,
Mine too.
I don't blame you.
Yeah.
Even the researchers are struggling to keep up with how fast the workplace is changing.
It's true, but amidst all this change, I think there are some timeless principles that still apply.
Well, that's good to hear.
You know, we might need to tweak our approach, but those core elements of motivation, setting clear goals, a sense of autonomy, trust, and belonging, those are still crucial, whether your team is virtual self-managed or even has some robots on it.
So it's not about throwing out the old playbook completely.
No, not at all.
It's about adapting it to these new and sometimes really weird team dynamics.
Exactly. Like take those multi-team systems, for example. Yeah. You can't just have clear goals within your own little team anymore.
Yeah.
You need to understand how those goals connect to the bigger picture, the overall mission of the system.
Otherwise, it's like everyone in the orchestra is playing a different song.
Exactly. It might sound interesting for a second, but you're not going to get a beautiful symphony.
Right. And what about when you're on multiple teams at once?
Yeah.
Trying to juggle a million projects.
That's when prioritization becomes essential.
It's like trying to keep all those plates spinning in the air at once.
I know.
Without letting any of them crash.
And to avoid that, you need boundaries. Clear communication with everyone involved, and most importantly, you need to learn to say no.
Oh, the power of no.
It's essential.
Especially in a world with never-ending to-do lists.
Definitely. And then when we think about remote work, the challenges get even trickier.
Totally. How do you create a sense of team and camaraderie when you're mostly staring at screens?
It's hard to replicate those casual office interactions, those water cooler moments, or those brainstorming sessions when everyone's remote.
Yeah, it is.
But it's not impossible. Leaders have to be more intentional about creating those opportunities for connection.
Like what kinds of things?
Virtual social events, or just creating space for informal chats and promoting open communication.
So it's like being a gardener, but all your plants are in different locations.
Exactly.
You have to tend to each one, make sure it's getting enough light and water.
It's about personalized care, even in this digital world.
And speaking of digital, what about those AI teammates?
Oh, yeah.
How do we even think about motivation in that context?
Well, it all comes back to theory of mind. If AI can actually understand human motivation, not just copy it,
right,
then it has the potential to change how we work together in some really amazing ways.
It's like having a teammate who can read your mind.
Kind of, except it's not magic. It's algorithms and machine learning.
But the benefits are similar.
Yeah, AI could help us be more self-aware, more efficient, better collaborator.
But we can't just blindly adopt the technology.
No, definitely not.
We need to be smart about how we bring AI into our teams and make sure it's helping us, not hurting us.
Exactly. Transparency is key.
Yeah, people need to understand how it's being used, what it can and can't do, and how it affects their roles.
Right. We want AI to be a tool that empowers us, not replaces us.
Definitely. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to turn it back to you, the listener.
Yeah.
How are you experiencing these shifts in teamwork? What are your biggest motivation challenges right now?
Are you thriving in this world of multiple teams and virtual collaboration, or are you feeling kind of lost and overwhelmed?
Take a minute to think about your own experiences, what's working for you, what's not.
Yeah.
And here's one last question to ponder. If we can teach AI to really get human motivation, could it actually make us better team players?
Could it help us unlock a whole new level of team performance?
It's an exciting thought, and maybe a little bit scary, too.
It is.
The future of teamwork is full of possibilities, both good and bad.
Yeah.
But by staying curious and adaptable
and motivated,
we can navigate these uncharted waters and build teams that are truly exceptional.
Absolutely.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the constantly changing world of team motivation. Until next time, stay curious, keep learning, and keep those motivation engines running.